our meeting begin, and I thank everyone for being here, and we have a quorum. And the first order of business is any public comments? Anybody from the public that wishes to discuss something? Okay, so we'll go to the next order of business, which is the minutes from the May 4th and the June 1st meetings. And everyone got them in an email, and I have printed copies of them if anyone wants to peruse them. And if we do them one at a time. So can someone offer acceptance?
Move to accept.
Thank you. And who seconds?
I'll be pleased to second.
Okay, great. So this is for the May 4th. So everybody in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. None opposed. And the next one is the June 1st. And do we again have someone willing to move on this action? Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thanks so much. And all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and we don't have any opposition. Thank you. All right, now, new business. We have a hearing action for some of our historic nominations, and I believe Matthew is going to give us a little precursor here.
It didn't dawn on me until just a few moments ago that the two nominations that are before us are the city and the housing authority, which is actually the first time that both of municipal entities have brought a nomination forward. So first off is the Erie Municipal Building. If you don't mind, I will switch over. Here we are. The Erie Municipal Building, as we sit in it, was brought before us today by the city for consideration. So today, your responsibility is to determine whether or not there is reasonable cause for this building to be considered a historic site, and then, should you so choose, to make a recommendation to City Council. The building is located at 626 State Street, and it is in the Erie Downtown Development Corporation and Erie Downtown Partnerships neighborhood. I think we're off a little bit on the mark. I'll have that updated. It is within Erie's downtown and is also a contributing structure within the Downtown Historic District. That's on the National Register. Here you'll see the building and site is outlined in red. And then the next few photographs are site photographs of the building. I know this is all very familiar to you, as over the past couple of months, we've also reviewed this for the National Register of Historic Places. So as it relates to our own code, the building would be eligible under criteria A, its association with events that have made a significant contribution to the broad patterns of Erie history. And in this case, the municipal building is reflective of city governance and the changes in kind of attitudes and approach to governance that dominated the 1950s and 60s. I think that one of the kind of biggest narratives that we have when we do the tour of City Hall is that there's a direct contrast between the old City Hall and the new municipal building, and that the construction of this building was stylistically drastically different, but also fundamentally different in a view of how government should work. That the old City Hall had a very tiny council chambers that really wasn't meant for contributions from the public. It wasn't meant or designed in a way where the public would have kind of easy access to the people who were running all the different components of the city. And so by its demolition, that there was a conscious rejection of how that form of government worked. and that there was a kind of move and aspiration that this city would be a professional entity. And so what we have with us today is what looks like a modern skyscraper, and that the people that work within it are beholden to the public, that all the different functions of the city are meant to be transparent and accessible. And so as part of the design of this building, it's why that when you walk in, it is all glass, so that the public is able to see not only what business is going on here, which is the seat of city government, but then also across the way, the treasurer's office, that there's supposed to be transparency into the finances of the city as well. And these were all kind of inherent critiques of what city governance was like at the early 20th century, where all of these different components weren't easily accessible to the public. It's also why these two important departments are located on the first floor and immediately when somebody walks in. And so the design of this building is really a reflection of kind of 1950s and 1960s aesthetics, but that there is a distinct philosophy behind it and behind how government works. And we'll talk about that, I think, a little bit more when we go into some of the history. So in this we kind of truncated everything. The real kind of push for a new city hall began in 1957. And the city at that point put up a bond for about $3.65 million for a consideration to build a new building. This was largely in a response to the concerns of everyday citizens. There was a nonprofit organization that was founded explicitly for the advocacy of building a new city hall. And they were the ones that were able to advocate for city council to put this bond before the public. Ultimately, the public thought that it was much too expensive and that that kind of money should not be spent on something specifically like this. And fast forward to the early 1960s, in 1962, the Redevelopment Authority, which is RACE today, received a special grant from the federal government for about $1.6 million, so just about half the cost of what it would be to build a new building. At that point in time, it was decided that the cost was much more reasonable and to move forward with the project. And so what's particularly interesting is that RACE in Erie was the first to receive this kind of federal funding. And throughout the course of the 1960s, this would be a model that was replicated all over the country. So we see a lot of redevelopment authorities kind of stepping into that role of acquiring property, redeveloping it. And unfortunately, this is also a period of time when we lost a lot of our kind of older city fabric. A lot of Victorian buildings are no longer with us that really dominated downtown. The site here was particularly interesting because we did have the old City Hall, which sat on the corner, which was now entirely contained within the current parking lot here. But the rest of the block was a bit of a hodgepodge of other buildings. And they were buildings that were owned by the city, largely, and not designed for city purposes. And so you had different departments kind of spread out throughout the entire block, which made functioning very difficult. So part of the kind of ideal and aspiration was to bring everybody together under one roof where they'd be able to talk to each other, and different departments, different agencies would be able to have more of kind of open communication. So that takes us to June 6th in 1963, when ground was broken on the new municipal hall. In September 16th, 1964, City Council held their last session in the old City Hall, and then the next week, they met on a weekly basis at that point, they had their first session here in City Hall. In December 1964 and 1965, through that period of time, Old City Hall was demolished, and the new parking lot and kind of the underground garage were all created at that time. What's particularly interesting is in that period, the City Hall wasn't just merely demolished, it was taken apart. And so we have lots of different photos from that period from RACE where it was deconstructed. And so its demolition occurred over a relatively long period of time and was very visually accessible to everyone here in Erie. And part of the purpose and part of the meaning behind that was, again, much like the design of this building, it was meant to be symbolic, that Old City Hall was being taken apart the way that things were done in the past. We're no longer going to be part of how things are done in the future. We see a lot of kind of internally within City Hall, a lot of really exciting and somewhat cutting edge things happened during that period. And actually we'll talk about it a little bit more when we start talking about the archives later on in this meeting. But that takes us kind of to today. So in August 2018, I'm sorry, that date's not actually, it should be of this year. This building, as you know, was nominated by the city to be listed on the National Register of Historic Places this past month in June. It was a unanimous vote before the Pennsylvania State Historic Board that it was recommended to the Park Service. So sometime within the next month or so, we'll have an understanding of whether or not we're listed as well. But the city felt it was important because of this program and because of our kind of openness, again, about how we treat our buildings and how we treat our historic resources, that if something is recognized as having importance, historic importance, that it also be listed on the city's register as well, so that planning and future conversations around the building and how it will be shaped and formed would be something that's open and accessible to the public. And so in that way, this is a bit of a continuation of the spirit of the 1960s and the creation kind of this building. That being said, I do have a couple pictures for you. Thanks to RACE and their archives, we were able to access a tremendous amount of materials around this building's construction. What you see here are a couple pictures, both of the old City Hall and then the kind of lot and all of the steel work that would go into framing the building. And then a picture on the left is the building once it was completed, and then the kind of gradual demolition of old City Hall. And here you'll see the roof has been removed as well as some of the features. So it's...
So where did the things that were dismantled end up?
You know, all over Erie. Some of the stained glass, I know, ended up at the Hagen History Center. I think that the cornerstone of the old building, we have part of it here in City Hall, but there's also part of it in private hands as well. So a bit of everywhere. And we're very fortunate to have those institutions that were good stewards of those relics, because we have, I think, a bit better understanding of what it was like in Old City Hall. It was meant to be very drastically different than what we have today. The descriptions from that period call it really dark, that it had a lot of dark woodwork, it had a lot of stained glass, so there wasn't a lot of natural light, that the feeling was a bit gloomy. You see in these advertisements from the 1950s, when this nonprofit was in place to advocate for a new city hall, that they talked about kind of substandard working conditions and documents that were in damp places and that sort of thing. So we do have a pretty good idea of what it was like in the older building. I know it pulls on all of our heartstrings now to see that have lost that building. I think all of us would very much have liked to see both.
We should have had this committee then.
Yes. It would have turned out a bit differently.
Because I think they could have coexisted. But anyway, that was the 50s mentality at the time. Preservation wasn't the top issue in everyone's mind. And so there you have it.
Yep. This building tells an important piece of our history. And although it's complex, it's nonetheless kind of what we inherited. And that's part of what historic preservation is being able to acknowledge and confront difficult stories and things that we might otherwise regret. We do have this building, which is, as we go forward into this nomination, it's also a very classic piece of mid-century modern architecture.
Who was the architect?
Sorry?
Who was the architect?
Neil, yes. Yep, exactly that.
Were they like the cutting edge at that time for this type of building?
Maybe, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Actually, for Erie, yes. So they did, not only did they design this building, they designed our airport, and they also designed Erie Insurance. And so for mid-century modern architecture, yeah, they were the firm to go to.
Okay.
I will also say that in conversations that we had with the architect, this building was meant to be inherently different because of its function. And so he was looking actually towards the American Embassy in Athens, which was designed by Walter Gropius. And the intent there was that you had a kind of Athenian approach to democratic form of government, right? That not only was it modern in design, but that there was this kind of inherent thousand-year-old legacy of democracy, of being open. And that's something that has actually resonated throughout our civic history, that kind of looking back towards Greece and Rome, towards the representative forms of government, has been an important narrative here in Erie. I know this is part that not everybody gets to see, but I think it's one of the coolest rooms in the building. This is the control panel for the old control panel. It's all done by computers now for our steam and heat and cooling. But this building maintains a substantial amount of historic integrity, even down to the finishings. When we conducted the city survey in 2025, it was determined to be not only something that should be listed on the National Register, but that it was also a contributing building to the downtown district. And that takes us to where we are now, determination of reasonable cause. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. And thank you.
So do you want us to vote now?
Yeah, if
Okay.
you have any...
Do we have,
I move we determine there is reasonable cause that the Erie Municipal Building meets the qualifications to become a City of Erie historic landmark as it conveys significance under the criteria A and C and holds sufficient historic integrity.
thank you.
And it's the coolest building in town.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll be pleased to second.
And now we can vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed. Okay.
Thank you. There is one more step, as always, if you so choose. You're also able to make a recommendation to council if you're comfortable. And so that case, you've determined that there's history
okay, so
here.
now that we have voted on this, it can go to city council.
Yes,
All
exactly
right.
that. So you need to make another motion then for the formal recommendation.
Okay. Can you,
I move we provide a positive recommendation to City Council that the Erie Municipal Building be listed on the City of Erie's Register of Historic Places as it conveys historic significance through criteria A and C and maintains sufficient historic integrity.
does anyone second?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so it passes and will go to city council.
Thank
And we
you.
have our representative from council here, so. All right. Now, can we go to the next building?
There we are. All right. So this building, as I have been calling it, is the Bedecker-Rottstadter House, so named after its first two noted families. This is a property that's owned by the Housing Authority of the City of Erie, who's here with us today. Oh, well, indeed. But as we'll learn about, and as the statement that you have in front of you, it is a project that is being taken on by the Housing Authority. So to delve into it a bit, I'm sorry I skipped over that. Again, as before, your job today is to determine whether or not there is reasonable cause for this building to be considered a historic landmark, and then also, if you so choose, to make a recommendation to City Council. The building is located at 357 and 359 East 10th Street in Erie. There is no specific neighborhood group that oversees this kind of geographic location. So unfortunately, we weren't able to reach out and kind of solicit community input as we have done in the past. You'll see here the resource is bounded in red. It's the one house, not including the parking lot, kind of underneath. That's a different parcel. And here is the resource. So it is two distinct houses in one building, which I know is very much characteristic of Erie housing. And that's part of, I think, the lens by which we should look at this building. I have some more site photos as well, because you'll see, if you get a bit closer in, there are some pretty exceptional historic details that still exist. And so what you see here is a porch covering for the entranceway. On the left-hand side is one that faces east, and then on the right-hand side is the one that faces west. And what likely has happened here is that originally this was the kind of entryway into the building that has since been enclosed. And so you would have had a little porch and a little walk-up. If you kind of, on closer inspection, you can see that there are some individual steps as well that date back to the...
So is it going to remain closed, or are they going to open it up?
We'll get there.
Okay.
So also, if you have a bit closer look at some of the window openings, you'll see that there's quite a good deal of original fabric as well. So you have the wood trim around the windows, and some of the double-hung wood windows still exist. Some of the other windows in the building have been replaced over time, but they still maintain the opening size even though the materials have changed. So there's still 1/1 windows. Okay, so we can dig into the history of this building a bit. So what you see in front of you now is the plat map from 1900. The building is the one that is kind of highlighted in pink and is yellow. So what that means is that the building is actually of wood frame construction, and that it's faced in brick and stone. You'll see, you'll also see that each of the different kind of porch entryways are highlighted in wood. The yellow is wood in this map. And so that indicates to us, as well as the materials that are present there, that this is still, and most likely, the original kind of historical openings to the building. It's in a bit of a strange place. And so you'll see like this lot size is atypical, both to the lots that are on 10th Street and into Erie. And this is because Parade Street has a very, very old kind of component to our history. And many of the buildings there kind of predate a lot of what we have on State Street, which are later Victorian. So likely that this property was originally subdivided. You'll see that we're, from some of the other site photos that I've included, we're missing a bit of fabric in this neighborhood too. So this building is now kind of the anchor. The building that's on right, which would have been all stone, has been demolished. And some of the ones along Parade Street as well, the yellow and the green, are no longer with us. They're kind of an open parking lot. And so when you're looking at this neighborhood, this building is really kind of the first kind of entryway into what is historic fabric, kind of moving to the west. So as I mentioned before, and part of the naming origin of this building is that there are two different residences located in this one building. One is at 59 East 10th Street, and the other is at 359 East 10th Street. The other is at 357 East 10th Street. So it was constructed as a duplex. And what we see in going through both the plat maps for this, as well as the city kind of registry for folks, is that Paul F. Ratchstatter, who was a doctor, had this building constructed and then used, his family lived in one half, and he also operated out of that half as well. And then the other half was dedicated as a boarding house. And so we have all different kinds of names kind of come and go over time. And what we see is that it looks like the building was divided kind of in several different ways over its history. That there were rooms to let, that there were entire floors to let. And so that what you have here kind of within one building is a real snapshot of diversity when it comes to housing in the city of Erie, and especially housing pre or kind of early 20th century, because from about 1900 to the 1950s, we see this as kind of the pattern of residency in these homes, is that you'd have a single family living in one half and then renters living in the other. After the 1950s, this diversifies greatly, and both halves are really used as boarding and as rental units. And so for almost the entire history of the building, it served almost the same function of this diversity of housing within Erie. As we can attest to, a lot of our zoning came about in the 1960s, and a lot of this kind of diversity and kind of complexity of housing we lost. And the expectation, not just within Erie, but as like kind of larger cultural trends, is towards single-family homes. And we see that throughout the city, kind of new construction at that time was really centered on individual single-family homes. And so what we have in front of us today is really a snapshot of how housing worked in the kind of early 20th century. I also found it particularly interesting that the diversity of jobs that family members worked. So just looking at these two different families, Rochstatter was the only person who worked in his family. He had a wife, he had children, none of them were employed. But just next door, you have not only almost the entire Bedecker family working, they all had very different jobs. Eberhardt was a shoemaker, his wife was a clerk, their kids who were of age were machinists, and at this time you still had two, Minnie and Henry were both at school. They also had, they were letting a room out in their house, and so that name there, the Henry Secord as a laborer. So the family was renting the house, and then they had a room that they would let out to subsidize their own income. So you had a really complex relationships between so many different family members just within this one structure. I think it's pretty remarkable, and it's also something that we have seen through other nominations that have come before us, less by way of housing and more by way of commerce. So when we think back to the South Erie Ironworks, for example, we had two buildings with two different addresses that served a commercial function. And then when we look towards the what is now McCoy's, which was the Foreman Block, we also had two different addresses in one building as the Foreman Block building. This is really the first example that we've had of residential architecture that has this particular type. But I think that, as all of us know, this is something that's a pretty common feature here in Erie, is that you have duplex housing, and that duplex housing usually has a really complex kind of economic and residential component to it. So right now, I know that this is kind of the first nomination where we've looked at this kind of situation, but I do think that it's remarkable and that it's something that we need to take into consideration. So I suggested and recommend that we look at it under criteria A, which is that it's associated with the events that have made a significant contribution to broad patterns of Erie history. In this case, I know when we look at the word event, we're thinking of, a formal proclamation, or we're thinking of, a specific moment in time. In this case, what we're looking at is really the evolution of residential housing here within the city. And this building itself is, I think, excellent because it is a snapshot of that moment. And that when we look at it, especially as a commission, holistically, we're looking at all different kinds of different housing types. And so from this period, the only other two that we've looked at is a home in Frontier and then another just along 6th Street, who are single-family homes, very prominent people. I would say that this fits into that as well, because it gives us a lot more breadth and diversity when we're looking at how residential housing evolved within the city of Erie. I also think and would recommend that there's a bit of an architectural component here as well. So most of the buildings that we know as duplexes are primarily wood construction and balloon architecture, but this is a bit different because of its size and its scale. They are trying to emulate what is Richardsonian Romanesque. So these are people who are creating an edifice that's meant to convey a certain degree of wealth and status. And I know it's changed over time. The building's been stuccoed, and so you don't really get the full kind of sense of what the brick and the stone would kind of want to communicate. But I think that the massing, the size, and the scale of the building still speak to what was its original purpose and what its original message was. I also included a couple snapshots here of advertisements through the 1930s and 50s, and even then, as early as the 1920s, this was not only used as a residence, but people were operating small businesses out of it as well. And so in this case, you have someone who's sewing letters onto clothing. In the doctor's house, you have advertisements specifically for the clinic that would operate out of there. And then for integrity as well, there have been some modifications over time to the exterior. Those modifications haven't been structural. They're largely either decorative in nature, and so here you can see that the stone has been painted over, likely as a way to help seal water infiltration, and the stucco that's been placed over the brick as well. That's something that is not original, but again, most likely added to help stop water infiltration, and both things that can be reversed.
Can you see the stone now?
You can see the stone like this. You can see that there are parts of it where the paint has either come off or is kind of worn away. And so, yeah, you can see underneath it's kind of a dark hewn granite. When the 2025 architectural survey was done of this building, our surveyors took a very interesting approach. So most of it's binary. They said that this is either something that should be listed on the National Register or something that perhaps is not eligible. On this one, they put undetermined. And what that meant is that they didn't know enough about the building and its context, about how it fits into our history.
This is the National Register. Okay.
To make a determination. And so they left it for us today, and this isn't the only building, there are others like it as well, where they thought that there was something important there, but that the narrative was too complex for them to capture just by sight. And that's it. My recommendation to you as a commission is that you find that there is reasonable cause for this to be considered a historic landmark. And I will kind of put myself out to answer any questions about its history or some of the thought process behind how we came to this point. I will also implore of you that we have members of the Housing Authority who, again, are very interested in taking on this as a project. And I'm sure I've provided all of you also with a statement as well.
Are they going to make their presentation now?
Would you like to join us at the podium and say anything?
Good afternoon.
Yeah.
I am
Thank
Dusty
you.
Dennis. I'm the Executive Director of the Housing Authority of the City of Erie.
Okay.
Renee Lamus is here with me. She's our Director of Development. And we are partnering with Michael Hooks, the owner of this building. Michael operates a commercial kitchen that he put in maybe back in 2018. And he has used that kitchen to provide meals to families who are in need. He has provided meals to some of our elderly residents in our high-rise buildings, like at Christmas time, during COVID. He wants nothing more than to give back to his community. He's had some real-life experiences that have made him want to become more involved in the community. And so we are partnering with him. We want to renovate his building into 4 one-bedroom apartments that will serve transition-age youth, young men, ages 18 to 25, who are either homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. And so this project will preserve what you've talked about with the historic nature of this building. At one point, it was a rooming house. And we want to continue that tradition of this building being an anchor building on Parade Street, 10th and Parade, but also bring it back to life, use his commercial kitchen to give these young men some real-life employment skills. And then also Michael has other businesses. He has a snow plowing business and a car care business, so he'll be able to employ these young men and mentor them. We'll show them. The Housing Authority will project-based vouchers there, so they will have rental assistance attached to those apartments, and we will work with them on how to become a good tenant. He will mentor them. We will also bring in additional services. One of our strengths as a housing authority is that we have a lot of community partnerships. We work with GCAC, we work with Early Connections, Community Health Network, a whole list of the City of Erie through the policing program that we have. So we are good at creating partnerships that promote self-sufficiency of our residents. And so that's what this building will be used for. And then I'm happy to answer any questions because I'm sure I didn't answer everything you'd like to know.
Well, I believe you all are really trying to take it back to its original look, which is what we're about.
Correct. So the
And,
exterior
so
would be.
I think that's wonderful.
Yes, we have our architect, Bob Mars, Roth Mars Partnership. He's involved. The Housing Authority has invested money into this project already with these architectural drawings to make sure that the building can accommodate what we need it to accommodate, but that we also preserve, to your point, the exterior of the building and preserve that historic look. We do not want to alter that. We want to bring it back, actually.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions?
Anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I just had a question. It has nothing to do with the designation. Is there any of the interior, original interior there still? Any fireplaces or any staircases?
No
Just
fireplaces.
curious.
I don't think the building had any fireplaces. I don't remember
Or
seeing
no
any.
central stair? Okay, just
No.
wondering. Yeah,
No,
'cause
no
it-
fireplaces, yeah, central staircase, some woodwork, I would say, that if it's still in good shape, will be preserved if at all possible. We actually, this is on a side note, but to that point, we're renovating a duplex right up the road from that building, that all that woodwork is going to be preserved, and it's absolutely beautiful. So if we can do that in any way, shape, or form, the Housing Authority is going to make sure that that stays intact.
That's great.
Yes.
Yeah, it's usually a challenge to renovate historic buildings, but when you have a use for it, that's always the key. So it sounds like you have a great use. It's already been being used by Michael, so that's great news for us.
Yes, and his kitchen's amazing. He does great work out of there. This will be a great opportunity for these young men to learn a useful skill that they can then take out in the community and become employed.
Great, thank you.
Why, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
I make a motion. I move to determine if there's a reasonable cause for the Whitaker and Rastatter, am I saying that correct?
Mm-hmm.
Meets the qualifications to become a City of Erie historic landmark as it conveys significance under criteria A and C and holds sufficient historic integrity.
Anyone second?
I'll be pleased to second.
All right. Can we now vote? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? There were no opposers. Okay. Well, thank you.
Well, before we get too far along, here's an image where you can see again how it really is the anchor to East 10th Street. But also, if you would so choose and be so kind to make a recommendation to City Council as well, we can move the
All
nomination
right.
along.
So who is going to move this along?
No, I'll do it. I move we provide a positive recommendation to City Council that the Baedeker and Rastatter House be listed on the City of Erie's Register of Historic Places as it conveys historic significance through criteria A and C and maintains sufficient historic integrity.
Thank you. And anyone second?
I'll be pleased to second.
Okay. And let us now vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? We don't have any opposition. Okay.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For coming.
Thank you.
very much.
Now, are you going to enlighten us about the City Parks Research Project?
Yes.
Okay.
Exciting news to share. As all of you know, the Bureau of Planning and Zoning has been acutely focused on parks these past couple of months because the comprehensive park plan that we've been working on now for well over a year and a half, has come to fruition, and we're sharing that draft with the community. One of the recommendations that is in that plan was that we conduct a cultural research study for our parks. And the reason behind that is, of course, because it was very important to the community. During all of the different community feedback sessions that we had, we heard again and again there was a desire to have the history of the parks and how they fit in to our civic history explored, and to have a lot more information about them, so that when it comes time to make improvements to the parks and changes, that we understand what that history is and can be respectful and integrate it into whatever the future is. We're very fortunate in that because it was one of the recommendations in the plan, the DCNR, the Department of Natural Resources, was able to provide us with some funding for this project. And so now we're working to put together what would be a kind of multi-phased approach to do a cultural resource study on our parks, and then perhaps working in coordination then with the State Historic Preservation Office to look to do MPDF, a multi-property documentation form, so that our parks have a lot more, I want to say, recognition of their rich history than we currently enjoy. So I know that this is kind of coming on the heels of the grant that we were awarded by SHPO for our firehouses. And this is another way in which historic preservation, our culture, and our heritage has, again, showed up in yet another major initiative of the city. So you'll be hearing more about it kind of as things progress. It's a project that doesn't yet have a very firm time schedule because it is still in process of us kind of shaping what that looks like, and then also working with sources of grant funding and contractors and putting out for RFPs and kind of
So the Parks Department has been interfacing with you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a collaborative effort between the Planning and Zoning and our Public Works Department and Parks that that we are all working together. And so this is something that the plan itself reads very much like our historic preservation plan. There's so many different recommendations. It's meant to be a guideline over the next 10 to 20 years. But this was a very important one to the community and one that resonated with us. So we're very excited about it.
And are we trying to preserve how the parks were designed originally?
I think that one of the things that we'll probably want the researcher to focus on is that if there are parks that have a very specific historic design, I'm thinking in Columbus Park in particular, and some of the other parks that were done in the 1930s have a very kind of distinct layout. And some their history is a lot different. They came into fruition, came into existence in the 1960s, 1970s, when park planning was in a very different kind of place.
Right.
And then, of course, we have Perry Square, which has changed about as many times as there are years. So each park has a really different, I think, history and historic narrative to it. Some are going to be centered on design. I think some are going to be a lot more, ephemeral in their history and how they capture something in the community.
I'm just curious. I know Perry Square has an organization that really is very interested in preserving the past of the park. Do any of the other parks have that kind of community support?
Yeah, actually, it's a lot of diversity. Some of them come with a partnership with neighborhood organizations. There are others, like in Frontier, we have LEAF. That's a nonprofit that operates the Arboretum. And so, the park system itself has a lot of different community groups and nonprofit organizations. Thinking too, like Lighthouse Park, they have a nonprofit and their Port Authority. And Washington Park as well, I know is connected
So
to.
they're all a part of this as well?
Yep. So we have as many diverse organizations operating in our parks as we do parks.
Okay. That's interesting.
Mhm.
Now, should we move on to old business?
Let's.
Okay. So you all had the write-up about the draft historic signature legislation. And, I found it really interesting. And I guess today, are we basically signing off on these 7 pages as what it's going to do?
So this will function a lot like a nomination does. So I'm very interested in having your input. This comes out of our historic preservation plan. Specifically, I think it's initiative B3, design and implement a cultural marker initiative as part of a broader interpretation programming. So this is something that we've talked about in the past. What I think the commission can do today is look over this. If there's any specific feedback on how this program would work, or any changes that you would like to see in kind of the draft legislation, then let me know. This is going to be a living document right up until the point where council makes a decision. And so if you today want to make a recommendation about whether or not this legislation should be recommended to council, that would be an appropriate motion. Also, if you want to talk through and use this opportunity to really kind of break out how this process would work and what it looks like, we can do that too.
Well, maybe we can study this, because I think it's fascinating, and I don't know that I feel prepared to endorse it yet, but I think it was very thorough and very specific.
We wanted to, we're all creatures of habit, right? And so the historic kind of marker program would function a lot like our landmarking program. And in that, we'd have applications be open to the community, and somebody would submit an application, it would be reviewed by staff. I would do a presentation recommendation. And at least once a year, we'd get together and talk about each of the different kind of markers. I know kind of what's a key component of this, though, is what's brought into existence. And so we'd want to make sure that if we have a marker program, that those markers would be funded in some way. And in this way, the legislation provides an opportunity for outside funding. So if there's an organization that wants to fund a marker about a specific subject, they can.
Now, that was one of my questions. I think it would be great to have funding, but what if someone is willing to pay for it themselves, a property owner?
I think they would need to. So it would either be, it'd be incumbent upon the applicant to put together the funding. And there are several different granting organizations that exist.
That they could approach, type
Yes.
of thing? Okay.
And some are within the community here, some are national organizations.
It could
that
be a
focus on
combo.
markers.
It could be a combination of the person writing a check and then getting some of it from one of these other resources.
Yep.
Madam Chair, if I may, I'm a little familiar with the program that's in Edinburgh. My foundation actually participated. We erected a historic marker in honor of Waldo Bates, who is the grandfather of the art program at Edinburgh. So the foundation actually, we had to pay, I think it was $1,000 for the fabrication of it. And then part of it was also escrowed into a perpetual care fund. And I would advocate that we find a way to do that, because there's going to be a day 50 years from now where these signs are going to need some sort of maintenance repair, and everybody's going to be looking at each other and say, who's got the money, and no one has the money. So I would advocate that we establish, a perpetual care fund as part of it. But it is kind of exciting. I'm also hoping that we can kind of catalog the existing markers that are around the city. We're, I think, all familiar with the Pennsylvania historic markers,
Right.
the blue and the golds.
Right.
I've seen white ones, I've seen green ones, I think, and there's a number of different kinds of historic markers. So being able to map those and identify those, it could be then a fun thing to do to help educate visitors and grade school and high school students about where the markers are, and finding them all throughout the city, and albeit Erie County, and really have a nice learning opportunity. So it's all very exciting. This could be a very big project, but it could also be a very worthwhile project.
Yeah, and I've noticed with I think the downtown group also has some markers out. But
And the city also has markers as well. Most of the parks that that existed in the 1970s had markers that were put into place at the city at that time. So you're right, it's a very much a quilt work of different signs. And here within the city, there isn't a particular mechanism or entity that's responsible for kind of ensuring exactly as you
so
said.
this could be something that we could be responsible
Yeah.
for. I like that.
Yeah, very, very, very exciting. We can be good stewards of other people's work, and making sure that this program exists, long after we're gone.
And there's all different, the reason when you go back into our historic preservation plan, the reason that it recommended the creation of a historic marker program is because there are so many stories out there that aren't necessarily tied to a building or even a park or a specific place. So this really gives us an opportunity to capture some of the stories that are already out in the community and, build them into like our website so people can see them. But then also, make sure that those other stories that haven't been told have an opportunity to be told.
Yeah. And I can see an opportunity of adding a QR code perhaps on the marker post itself, which will expand even more of the story of that particular property, or the history of the family, or the history of the business that was there. I can see really great things, very exciting things. So thank you for bringing this to us. This is very exciting.
So can I suggest that we all study it and come back next month with ideas?
Yeah.
Is that good for you, Matthew?
Yeah, absolutely. And
okay.
if any of you commissioners have questions, or want to kind of talk through anything, please feel free to give me a call in the meantime, and I'll put it on the agenda for next month.
Well, I was very impressed, and I think this is a really great beginning for this project. Thank you.
Of course.
All righty. So the next order of business is, old business, is the draft for the archive legislation.
Which is very similar in that, I know we talked about this a bit last month, but city is, we have so many different materials and no real central mechanism by which there's oversight into what those documents are, how they're made available to the community. And this way, by creating an official archive for the city, it would kind of fill that void. And so that we'd have an opportunity to work with each of the different city departments and bureaus and agencies to see kind of what materials are no longer of kind of daily use to them. So, materials that are 20, 30, some years old, to get a better understanding of kind of what function they have, if they should be, digitized and recorded, if they should be conserved or maintained and made available to the public. So it creates a mechanism to do that, and also to help manage kind of all of these different documents and different things that we have at our advantage. So the legislation before you isn't nearly as expansive. It's only a page long, and it's really the beginning of a process to, again, create an entity that would have this responsibility, and then have that entity continue on and create policy, create recommendations that would help the city maintain its records.
Now, would this person be an employee of the city?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that inherent in this is we would have a working committee where there would be mostly people from different departments within the city, but then also invite members of the community in, especially those that have expertise in archives and in material conservation, and be able to provide guidance on, partnerships and also kind of policies to put into place. So that way, we're looking at it comprehensively.
Okay. Now, is this something that you want us to vote on today, or?
It's up to you. I know that you received both of these pieces of draft legislation around the same time, so if you want to ruminate on it a bit, send me recommendations. I can also put it on next month's agenda for action.
Yeah, I'm just going to have some questions, I think, on coordinating with the county. I know the county, of course, has documents, and the Hagen History Center, and how all that might work. And
Okay.
so.
And then what, and ultimately, how involved are we with this organization?
I think we all have to take turns with the, keeping the office open.
Huh?
We all have to take turns keeping the office open. As
Yeah,
volunteers,
right, yeah. Okay.
All right.
Kidding, of course.
All righty, so we will have two major subjects for next month's meeting, and if everybody could come equipped with their notes and questions, and I think that'll be great.
Wonderful. And then I know we're over time. I'll go through the rest of the briefing very quickly. I'm very happy to say that the Erie Mentor Corps, the Labor Temple, and the South Erie Ironworks have all gone through the entire landmarking process.
Wonderful.
And are now official City of Erie
So
landmarks.
they are official?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wonderful.
We did have a public hearing for the Foreman Block and for the William and Mary Spencer House. During that public hearing, council moved forward on the Foreman Block, but they tabled the William and Mary Spencer House because they had some additional questions, and they wanted a bit more of the history around William and Mary Spencer. So that's information that we are digging into. We'll provide to council. The hope is that during their next session, which is on the 15th, they can act on that piece of
So two of
legislation as
them
well.
are official and the other three are pending?
Two of them are still working their way through the process, yep.
Okay, okay.
And then on our last bit, the city firehouses MPDF, we did issue an RFP, and we had two different applicants for it. We were able to talk to each of them and make a decision. In this case, we decided to go with EDR, which is the same firm that had conducted our architectural survey back in 2025. Mm-hmm. Well, over the course of 2024 and 2025. So they are folks with whom we are familiar. And I'm sure that they're familiar faces as well. And so we'll start that project. Again, we're going to have to send the contract to City Council for ratification, which we're hoping to do within the next session. So project's moving forward.
Good.
And that's all I had.
All right, so now do we have do we have a Bureau of Planning and Zoning updates?
I have just a small update. As Matthew mentioned, the Parks Plan, the Comprehensive Recreation Parks and Open Space Plan, otherwise known as Erie Outside, is right now in the third week of a 30-day public comment period. So that public comment period will be finished on July 21st. I encourage you all as the HRC to look at that plan through the lens of historic preservation, cultural resources, and provide any feedback that you may have to us. We certainly made sure that that was a component and addressed throughout the plan, and you'll find that in the recommendation section. It is a large plan. It's about 160 pages. So if you want to look at the executive summary and then maybe flip through to the recommendations section, that would be wonderful. You can either go onto the city's website and fill out the survey, or you can email Matthew or myself directly with any comments or questions if we overlook something or would like to make edits.
So we can email Matthew?
Yeah.
And he can send us the Reader's Digest version of the 160 pages, right?
Or, yes, Matthew can provide a link to where it is on our website, as well as to the survey that you can complete, or you can just email Matthew or me directly.
Okay.
But that's all I have for today. So,
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Always great to hear from you. So, thank you so much. Is there any other new business?
No, I know that Executive Director Snippert's not with us, and so that's
Okay.
no update from him. It's the end of our meeting.
All right, well then, does anyone want to offer a
Motion to adjourn.
motion to adjourn?
My pleasure. I'd like to make that motion.
Okay, all in favor? Aye? All right, great, we are adjourned.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.